Awesome. Okay. Yes, thank you so much for the intro. That was a real COVID moment, wasn't it? Still on mute. During this session, if there are any issues with audio or my slides, please do let me know in the chat. Every so often I'll be checking it. Just to introduce myself a little bit further. So, yeah, I'm Annika. I'm the founder of Grad Careers Coach, an organization that helps international students and graduates to search, apply, and land visa sponsored jobs in the UK. We have been doing this for just over 10 years, and I genuinely, I feel like I've seen it all in that time. When I started, there wasn't a graduate visa, it didn't exist. We've been through the pandemic where lots of CVs didn't have any work experience on them because graduates just couldn't access them. So, I'm going to be talking about the job market, but I'm also hopefully going to give you some hope that 2026 isn't as, bad as it seems. There are still opportunities, and it's about finding your pathway in this new and very different job market. So before I start, I'll also just say that I'm the founder of Raya Talent, which is a recruitment firm that I've set up last year. And the reason why I'm mentioning it is I now speak to hiring managers and SME startup founders who are trying to build their teams and are hiring grads and entry level professionals. And so it's so interesting for me to speak to grads and also speak to hiring managers, because it's not that the opportunities are not available. They're very much wanting to hire good quality grads for their firms, but they are really struggling to find them. So it's the applications don't hit the mark, or the interviews are again not hitting the criteria, and so they're really struggling. So I'm going to share, what I've learned from that perspective as well. So this webinar will cover finding real opportunities, standing out from the competition, which is, the competition has never ever been higher, to be honest, and building a career in the UK. I always talk about career rather than job, because this is really the mindset to be thinking about your long-term pathway, not just your first year in a role. So which sector sponsor, how to spot those real opportunities with visa sponsorship, and then 3 strategies that work. During this session, I encourage you to be really interactive. So please do, share questions or introduce yourself in the chat as we go. So let's start with an honest picture. So the competition for visa sponsored roles has intensified. So if you started applying and you're seeing or you're finding it more difficult to get a response from employers, or you are getting a response but it's a rejection, or we don't sponsor visas kind of response, then you're not imagining it. It is a very competitive market. And I think what makes it difficult is that most grads, there's no explanation of why you're being screened out or rejected. And I think when you don't know why this is happening, you keep going into the same cycle, and you're, on loop with the same application approach. And then obviously then you're seeing the same results, getting disheartened. You might be stopping your job search because you think I need a break, and then you restart. So this is, well, the purpose of our program. Karima mentioned we do have a program that we run side by side with GRB, but the purpose is so that you can actually get feedback and an explanation and clarity on why you're not landing interviews, or why you're getting rejected after interview stage. Okay. So I said 7 times more competition. The reason why is, so post July, there were really significant visa changes made by the UK government, which has made it harder for employers to offer sponsorship for grads who didn't meet the salary threshold, for example. And so a lot of employers have had to pull back and have had to, no longer sponsor for certain roles. And also the pool of international students has surged. So naturally there's the same amount for a limited number of roles. And sponsoring employers haven't grown at the same rate. So they have grown. So we are seeing lots more employers go and obtain a sponsorship license. They have grown, but it's not at the same rate. Then also you add into that job seekers using AI to create their applications and to apply, which is absolutely fine. And I would encourage you to use it. We certainly show our grads how to use it properly. But if it's not used well, what happens is companies are inundated with low quality or just not tailored applications that they then have to filter out. So the process of an employer going through these applications, inviting candidates for an interview is taken longer, to be honest. So there is just much more competition, and I'm sure you have seen it when you're looking at job ads, and especially LinkedIn will say, how many people have applied to this role, and it used to be a fraction of the number. Now it's so much higher, and I think that's because of AI making it much easier for candidates to just quickly submit. And this is also quite a high number, and again, it's honest from data that we've seen over the last year and a half. 82% of applications fail before human review. So what that means is the vast majority of CVs are rejected by applicant tracking systems, ATS, which is many employers have used for many years before ChatGPT. They were all using this AI generated tool before a human has had a chance to look at your CV. So the problem sometimes, it might not be your degree, it might not be your suitability for the role, or your lack of skills or talent or anything. It's your approach, it's the optimization, it's the understanding, what do I need to do to make sure my CV is ranked high enough in the applicant tracking system that I actually get invited for an interview. And then lastly, 1 in 3 sponsors aren't obvious. And I've said about, a third are actively hiring, but they don't advertise it clearly. They don't include it in the job description. It's hidden. And I think knowing where to look does change. But also I want you to feel encouraged that there is a whole hidden job market that you can tap into as well. Oh, is that the right slide? Yeah, okay. Which sectors are actively hiring international graduates right now? So I've always said this since the beginning of Grad Careers Coach 10 years ago, not all industries sponsor equally. You must align your job search with hiring demands in the UK right now, and they have to meet. You don't necessarily have to have a background in technology or financial services, for example, to go into that field, but you need to have skills that are a good match, that you can demonstrate that you can apply to this industry, or at least a real enthusiasm, passion, and knowledge of the industry that you're going into. So technology and engineering is at the top, and I'm sure this wouldn't be a massive surprise, but software, data, infrastructure, consistently the highest volume of visa sponsors, because they often, the roles will involve specialist skills. Okay, so, we worked with an international grad last year who's really amazing at visualization tools, Power BI, and actually learnt, she was doing computer science, but that was very broad, and she really decided to dig deep into this visualization tool and did a lot of self-learning and courses, and that ended up leading to a job offer. So that makes sense. And I think this is what we've seen more recently, is that sponsoring companies, well, actually companies hiring graduates generally, they do want specific skills that you can bring, and they do want evidence of your of upskilling yourself if you don't have that skill. So this is just a trend that we've seen. So, and then financial services has always been a top industry for the UK. You know, it's a leader in financial and professional services. So the volume of jobs is high. Okay, so banking, fintech, asset management, graduate schemes with clear sponsorship, yes, but also entry level and graduate jobs. Yes, they're competitive, but they are a great entryway into the UK job market. And I'm going to talk about actually that later on in this talk about grad schemes, because I keep hearing from, well, students ask me, you know, are graduate schemes still, you know, alive and kicking, and should I bother? So I'll talk about that a little bit later. Consulting and professional services, you know, we're all a big four, strategy and management consulting firms, lots of smaller consulting firms out there as well that maybe don't have as strong a brand awareness, but they are hiring and sponsoring. So there's some really good opportunities there as well. But look, these are highly selective. So again, if that is what you want to aim for, you must know more than anyone how to position yourself well, and your CV needs to be not just strong, but optimized for that kind of role and industry. Healthcare and life sciences, of course, FMCG and retail, creative media. I've put rarely sponsor only because I'm looking at the data that we collect within our organization for sponsoring jobs. So if we think of, you know, smaller marketing agencies or creative or digital agencies, they normally can't afford the cost, or the minimum salary for that role doesn't meet the 33,400 that you need if you're an international graduate. So it's thinking about these practical, having a practical approach is really important, because if you don't consider the UK job market and the landscape and what's happening behind the scenes with hiring, then you're going to struggle, and you won't get the interviews that you want, and ultimately the job offer that you want. So now it's, you know, important for me to show you how to identify real sponsorship, because this is one of probably the trickiest parts of your job search. And the UK, by the way, has not made it easy for you to find out whether a company will sponsor for that role. So it's up to you to be detective, essentially, and you have to cross-reference, and you have to research and ask questions. And I wish it had moved on since I've started, but unfortunately it hasn't, and it's still not transparent. And I think one of the reasons why, you know, job ads don't always clearly state whether they offer sponsorship is because employers don't want to be seen to be not a diverse employer. Okay, so it's very much because of that worry. But yeah, so it does add an extra element to your job search, but it's really important that you do it and know how to do it. So the first thing is check the sponsor register. So obviously the UK government website has a full list of companies that have bought usually a A-rated license, which means that they can, if they need to and want to, they can hire an international employee and sponsor them. If they're not on this register, they can't legally sponsor you until they've got that license. So all that means is that they can take that first step. Okay, and I think it's important to focus your applications on companies who do have the license, because they will at least have somebody in their team that understands the process of sponsorship. So you're not having to convince somebody, which can take time, and applying for a license can also delay things as well. Now, this is just the first step. I'm sure many of you know there are over 140,000 employers on that list. So while it's useful, you can't just rely on that, because again, just because a company has a license and they can legally hire you, it doesn't mean that they're willing to for that role. Their sponsorship could only be for senior roles, or they could decide, right, we're not going to sponsor this year, but they still have the license. So it's just one indication. So the second thing is read the job ads carefully. So there's lots of ways an employer will give away that they may not sponsor without actually saying they may not sponsor. And by the way, please do share in the chat if any of these relate to you, or if you've seen these. But one of them, for example, would be you need to have security clearance, or need to have lived in the UK for 5 years, or even something as simple as, need a full UK driver's license. There's lots of little ways that a company can indicate that it might not offer you sponsorship. Now, a brilliant scenario would be where you have a job ad and it says skilled worker visa sponsorship available, and you do get those. So it's worth always searching for that phrase in the job ad, or even searching for it on LinkedIn. You can filter for that on Indeed as well. So this should be your priority. So I mentioned graduate schemes. Now, there has been a drop in the number of graduate schemes with sponsorship. There's also been a drop in the number of graduate schemes full stop, because of AI, and also the increase of employers using or offering degree internships. So yes, there are fewer, however, I wouldn't discount them. They are a brilliant way to start your UK career. Many of them still come with sponsorship, because they're often offered by large employers, and they've got the infrastructure. They're global anyway. They'll have a global team. They've got the budget to sponsor you. So I would say do target them first. They're also more likely to have a clear deadline. So when you are thinking about how to plan out your job search, focus on the grad schemes that are still open right now, because they won't, the March is still active in about 3 months.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. I think there's something rubbing on the microphone. It's blocking your chat.
Sorry,
That's okay. No problem.
paper. Thank you so much for telling me that. God, I'm so sorry.
Problem.
Has that been for a while?
No. It was just in the last few sentences.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh gosh, sorry. Thank you for flagging that, Karima.
No problem.
So I would definitely plan well, make sure if there's any grad schemes that really interest you, get your applications in as early as possible. Then move on to graduate jobs, entry-level jobs, and companies that will hire all year round. I also recommend this free Chrome extension tool, which is really handy. It's called the UK Visa Sponsorship Checker. Basically, you download it, and it will be almost like a traffic light system for every company that shows up on LinkedIn and Indeed. You might need to refresh your LinkedIn page after you download the extension, but essentially, if a company has recently sponsored a candidate, then the company will show up in green. If they have never sponsored anyone before, it will show up in red. It's not a perfect system, but at least it gives you that signal of, right, shall I bother, applying to this company? It kind of gives you that reassurance. Now, I put in a never do this list. Yeah, and self-explanatory, but applying to companies that are not on the register, because it will just save time and friction knowing that they've got the license to sponsor you. Don't assume that equal opportunities means that they sponsor. Equal opportunities often relates to things like you know, like gender diversity or ethnicity or things like that. It rarely relates to international candidates. Okay. Don't wait until after the interview to raise sponsorship. Be open and honest about the fact that this is what you will require, because I have been in so many situations where a graduate comes to me because they've been working for a year or a year and a half at an employer who has said that they, not guaranteed, but they've dangled the carrot and said, oh, yeah, we will sponsor you when your graduate visa comes to an end, or let's talk about it nearer the time of your visa expiring, just get on with your role for now. And then when they are, maybe weeks away from their visa deadline, the employer says, we're actually really sorry, we can't sponsor you for this role. Things have changed, or it's not in our hands. If you're speaking to HR, I don't want you to be in that position. Okay, so when you go into a role while you're on your graduate visa, brilliant, see it as work experience, and it's valuable, and it's still absolutely great to be employed, but don't rely on that job converting to a visa sponsored job, because it almost always is never the case. Okay, so be super clear about sponsorship. And then finally, applying where visa support isn't confirmed. So yeah, again, it's just making sure that you're making the most of the time when you're applying. So you don't want to waste your hours and hours of researching a company, hitting apply, and then you could be the perfect candidate, but you're rejected because of something that isn't anything that you can do, anything that's in your control. Okay. So what separates the graduates who get offers? Yeah, so it's rarely about qualifications. It's rarely about the fact that you have your bachelor's and a master's and a PhD. We've moved on from assessing candidates just on their education. It's very much about having well-rounded candidates with experience. But actually building on from that, it's not just work experience. Employers are really looking at skills more so in this market than they were previously. So technical skills, or even interpersonal skills. But for example, if you want to go into project management and you've started your Prince, you started working towards your Prince certificate, for example, that shows motivation. It shows you already have some skill and some knowledge of this qualification. So it's actually becoming much more attractive to see a CV where somebody has taken the time to fill any skills gaps that there might be for that particular role. Okay, so if you're sat there thinking, should I boost my CV? Should I go and take a course in something that I don't know how to do, or brush up my skills? Then yes, I would say this would be the job market to do that. And the pattern that I have seen with our international graduates who've confidently landed sponsored jobs is the same. They all share the same three things, which is they make sponsorship easy to say yes to. Okay, so it's understanding the process, the cost, the timeline. They are sponsorship experts. And I know that's a lot to ask. You already have so much on your plate, but you do need to be confident about the process from the employer's perspective, because you might be speaking to somebody who has no idea, or they are not actually in charge of sponsorship. They have a HR team or somebody else. So you do have to know the process, the timeline, everything. So if you can talk about it confidently, it really helps to make that process a lot smoother. And the other thing is, for successful graduates apply like they're insiders, not outsiders. So they're already speaking the language of their target employer. And the way that they can do this is through deep research, tailored applications, and networking before they even apply. And every application looks like it was written for that role. So hyper tailored, hyper specific. And all of these things, by the way, you can do too. It's all learnable. And then finally they interview like they've already got the job. So interview is where many job applications can fall down. It's critical. People don't realize, but your interview actually determines, the likelihood of your offer. Offers are given out on great interviews. Offers are never given out on a great CV. Your CV's job is just to land you an interview. Okay. And once you've got your interview invite, please treat it as though this is the ultimate chance to secure your offer, and treat it seriously. I've noticed, especially with maybe video interviews, candidates taking it a little bit more casually, thinking, oh, it's just an online recorded interview. Please don't. Please take every single one seriously. You've worked really hard to land that interview. So if you don't prepare for it, and you're not confident in your delivery, that's where your job search ends. So these three things separate graduates who get offers and graduates who just keep going through the cycle of rejections, or worse, not hearing anything back. It'd be great actually to know from everybody here what situation you can relate to most. So have you started applying? Are you months into your applications? Have you been able to land interviews? So do share that with me on the chat, as well as any questions that you might have.
We actually already have one question if
Oh,
you wanted to
perfect.
answer that. Someone's asking, is it possible to start searching for a skilled worker visa if you are currently on a student visa with 6 months left to complete your studies?
Yes, absolutely. This is a great time if you've got 6 months left to complete your studies. So how it works is you would apply to jobs that would start after your course ends. So, for example, if you apply for a grad scheme that sponsors you now, the job won't start until September 2026, for example, and the company can offer you a contract, give you the job offer verbally or by email, whatever it is, but they won't then start the process of issuing your skilled worker visa. It's usually 90 days before your start date. Okay, so you can have your job offer in hand, everything is sorted, contracts can be signed, but the visa will be processed, your skilled worker visa will be in hand closer to your start date. And so it's just remembering that, grad schemes have this sort of longer time between when they accept applications and when they start their job, but you can absolutely apply to those. For other companies who might have a bit more of an immediate start date, I would suggest applying towards the end of your studies, basically. Okay, so if they really like you and they want to hire you, you actually can accept that start date. Okay.
Great, thanks. I think we actually have a couple others if you wanted to
Yeah,
answer them now.
sure.
This one's more of a statement rather than just a question, but I just started this week. I am optimistic, but I keep on hearing that the job market is difficult in 2026, so I'm a bit nervous as well, which is understandable, yes.
It is. No, it totally is, Ankit. And you're not the only one to be feeling nervous, and I think that's why you've all taken the time to be here. So that's a step in the right direction. So what I might do, because I think I've got a couple of questions as well about finding grad schemes, checking the company's website, but I may just carry on with the presentation and then come back to
Or,
them because that those could be answered, I'm pretty sure. But let
of
me, yeah.
course.
Um, so the first strategy as an international job seeker, building a targeted sponsor hit list. Okay, so instead of targeting hundreds of companies, really short list and confirm they're on the register and the steps that I have mentioned before you apply to anything at all. So a few hours will save you months of wasted applications. And that's how you have to think about it. Now, it could even mean that you have to message, 5 people in an organization and they could be recently joining the organization or somebody in the HR team and ask them just to check before I apply, does this role come with sponsorship? Now, if you direct that question to HR or talent acquisition, because they're often the ones who deal with grads, that's literally their job is to help answer questions like that. So you're not bothering them at all. You're asking a perfectly fair question, and they would be expecting, candidates to be asking. So do confidently ask HR at the company, okay, whether they sponsor or not. And again, yeah, there's a bit of a delay. You might not hear back for a little while, but in the long run, it's going to save you hours. Okay. The second strategy is always lead with value. Stop being an international candidate, somebody, seeking visa sponsorship, and become the candidate that they really want for that role and they need for that role. The amount of times I've heard, I just need visa sponsorship, or I'll take any job. That's not attractive for an employer. Nobody wants to hire a candidate that doesn't know their value and doesn't know how they are going to bring lots of value to that company and to that role. So reframe every CV, cover letter, and interview around what you will bring. So the visa sponsorship becomes just a detail and not the story. Please don't lead with that. Open every cover letter with specific insights about the company. Okay, when sponsorship comes up, lead with confidence, not apology. And we have strategies to show you how to have these conversations around sponsorship when, and also the approach as well. So always lead with your value, your USP, your skills. And then finally, the third strategy is to prepare for the sponsorship conversation. A rehearsed and confident conversation, it positions you as lower risk and removes fear, because often it's fear and uncertainty from the employer's perspective when it comes to sponsorship. Okay, know the timeline, which is, by the way, is well lower than 8 weeks and sometimes even much lower than 1,500. But know the process. Have your documents ready. Know your dates of your visa expiring, and also be comforted that large, but also SMEs and startups, they do this routinely. Most companies obviously that we work with and we help grads to land job offers in, they process visas routinely. Some of them do it in-house, some of them have a legal team that they outsource visa processing to, but this shouldn't be new, so don't feel worried about raising that conversation. So knowing what to do is step one. We all know what we need to do often, whether it's job searching, following a gym membership plan, me with running my business. We all know, and I'm sure all of you know what you need to do, but actually doing it and doing it consistently and doing it with fresh motivation every month is I think the hard bit, is the really hard bit. Many job seekers I speak to on the first call, they've always had a start and stop approach. And sometimes it's studies that get in the way. Sometimes it's just they need a break because it's quite, draining to be applying for months on end. So the first thing I'm sure you all know is you need to tailor your applications. I talk about this a lot and we cover this a lot in our program. But we can build you a targeting system from week one so you can tailor in 20 minutes, not hours and hours and hours. And so doing it efficiently will make such a difference. You feel like it's actually more achievable to apply to 3 jobs a day. You have a bit more consistency. You understand, okay, I am doing the right thing. So if I don't hear back, it's not my application, it's because they've already filled the place or whatever it is. LinkedIn matters. And so we help you go further and we optimize your LinkedIn profile so the recruiters can actually find you. They might search for skills, they might search for a degree course as well. They might search for certain experience and job titles, not the other way round. So always visualize that there are hiring managers struggling to fill a place and they're on LinkedIn and they're searching. You just want to make sure your profile ends up in their search when they search for X, Y, and Z things. So we help you to optimize it. The third thing that I'm sure you all know is that interviews need preparation. So on our Accelerate coaching program, you'll get a live mock interview with detailed feedback, honest feedback that you may not get from your careers university centre, who are often rushed. They can only give out maybe 20-30 minute slots. They can't give very specific feedback either, but you will have a live mock interview and you'll be able to keep the recording as well. I would suggest to everyone who goes through the program, you should watch your video. I know it can be really uncomfortable. You'll learn so much from watching yourself back than hours of practicing and, into thin air. So this is just the gap between what you know and then the action and making sure that you actually do it. Finally, the sponsorship conversation is really important. So to take any stress out of that, we script and rehearse it until you feel really confident about not just raising it, but talking about your situation as factually as possible, being super confident, and this is really important, but not desperate. No employer wants a desperate candidate. It's really important that this is delivered well. So this is what we cover. So before I talk about the Accelerate program, were there any other questions, Kareem? Because I can see a notification, but I don't think I can see the question.
Yeah, that's fine. So we've got one in the Q&A from someone that's anonymous. Is it possible to land a sponsored visa role with just a bachelor's degree alone, or does it require more qualifications?
It's a great question. You absolutely can secure a job offer with visa sponsorship on a bachelor's alone. And there's always a time in an international student's life where they think, should I do a master's? It really depends on your target role. So have a look at the roles that you are interested in. What does it say in the job ad? There will be some job ads, maybe 10% of them, that will specifically say we want a master's graduate, but most of them will not ask for this. And dig into what they are looking for. Look at grads who've been hired for the company that you want to work for. Look at their profile. Did they do a master's? Gather your research. It really depends on the role. But one thing I'd say, something that will trump a master's or just university degree is the skills that you bring. So making sure that there's no clear gaps between the skills and experience that you have compared to the jobs that you're looking for. Okay. And if there are, there's quick ways to close them, whether it's a course that you do online or some self-learning or, video training. Just think about how you can close any skill gaps, but you definitely don't need to worry. Employers absolutely hire grads who have done a bachelor's and not pursued a master's. Okay.
Great, thank you. And we've just got one more
Yes.
question from Farah Bors. This was from one from earlier. How can we find out about grad schemes? Is it by checking the company's website, or there's a database, or is there a database that we can search through?
Yeah. Okay. So Farah Bors, the best way to find out about grad schemes is to join a job board. So, one of my favorite job boards, as well as GRB, is Bright Network, Milk Round. There are so many graduate job boards, and they will, as long as you choose your selection criteria, what you're interested in, you will get alerts when that company has an open graduate scheme that they're hiring for. LinkedIn is also fantastic. Of course, check the company's website, but you might not have heard of the company, so you might not know what to search for. This is where a job board would be really good. Actually, I didn't mention the specific job boards for international students, so I'll put it in the chat now, and please let me know if you've had any experience with any of these job boards, because I'd be really interested to know. But these are just some of the ones that are very specific for international students and grads that we recommend. So Student Circus, UK Visa Jobs, with Poly, they filter job roles by sponsorship. Okay, so that can save you, again, lots and lots of time. So that's a good place to get started. So the Accelerate program so we've been running this program for many, many years, but we do adapt it. So we've had to adapt it, for example, since last July, when the visa changes came out, the minimum salary threshold went up. Certain industries we could no longer support, certain job roles. We weren't as confident that we could help grads land offers, and then other growth areas, that's what we're really focusing on. So how it works is it's an 8-week program with lots of one-to-one support. So you'll kick off with myself. I'll do a full CV audit. Any program has to start with a deep dive into your CV, because that is your first impression to an employer. And it has to work really, really hard, because, as I said earlier in the talk, you're competing with so many other candidates who have generated their AI CV and submitting alongside you. So you have to understand, how do I stand out, out of the crowd, and think about everybody on your course. If you've just graduated, or if you're still studying, look around. You're competing with those people. What makes you different to them? And there will be lots of ways that you stand out, but we just need to make sure it's translated nicely into your CV. We call it having a USP, a unique selling point, and every single one of you, by the way, has that. But I think sometimes it's really difficult to find what that is by ourselves. You almost need an external person to kind of ask you questions to really get, okay, this is how you stand out. This is how we're going to position you to employers. So I do a kickoff and clarity call. Weeks 2, 3, 4, we do one-to-one support, which basically takes you through applications, how to tailor, how to structure your cover letter. I'm noticing that cover letters are quite misunderstood, so kind of how to structure those properly. Quality over quantity, so it's about having a plan as well. Talked about LinkedIn and how important that is to be found, because it is a two-way process. And then, weeks 4, And five are interview preparation. So even if you don't have an interview coming up, I think it's vital that you start thinking about how prepared you are. What there might be parts that you're more confident answering and questions that you just think, oh, I'm not sure, I'm a bit stuck on those. It could be that you've never practiced before, you've never had a mock interview, you've never had somebody, give you detailed feedback, not just on the content of the answer and the structure, but also your delivery as well. And we call it building confidence before it counts. So you feel fully prepared before you get the interview invitation for your dream job, rather than you get your interview invitation, you've got 7 days to complete your interview, for example, if it's a video interview, and then you feel like, oh my God, I have to start preparing, and you're scrambling around preparing your answers. I think it should be much more structured so that you feel calm and confident on the day. Week 6, this is a really important part of the job application process, and it's handling offers. Handling offers carefully is really important. So don't assume once you've got your job offer that you could just relax, you tell your friends and your family, and that's it. No, you have to make sure that you respond in the right way. If you get an offer now, for example, in March, and your job doesn't start until September, you need to have a plan to check in with usually somebody in HR, somebody in a team who you can ask questions to, give your visa documents to at the right time, making sure you handle the offer. If you have multiple offers, how to handle saying no in a polite way. Don't ghost the employer. I know it's tempting after lots of ghosting on your part, but you also have to handle that really professionally as well. Okay. And just a top tip, it feels like a huge job market, but actually there are lots of graduate recruitment networks, and a lot of employers speak to each other. So handling an offer, or handling yourself well in front of a hiring manager, is really important, because even if they interview for the role, they think you're great, but they can't offer you the position, they'll use their network to say, I've got this great candidate. Do you have an opening for them? Okay, great. And then pass on your CV. So there is this network that's happening. Negotiation. So negotiating not just your visa, but negotiating salary, what you might need to if it doesn't meet the threshold straight away. This is really important. Understanding how to do it politely, professionally, will train you, will kind of be your support. And then momentum. And then at the end of the program, we do an accountability call. So a final conversation with your coach to celebrate progress that you've made, and to keep momentum. These are just some of the success stories that we've had, but essentially these international students were in exactly the same position that you guys are all in now. There's nothing they had that you didn't have. So, if I just think of a recent success story, just to paint a picture of how it can happen for you too. Don't think that, oh, but it will work for them, but it's not going to work for me. So I worked with a graduate, Camilla, towards the end of last year, and she was a master's graduate. She had about a year of experience in her home country, which was Ecuador. She actually had secured a job role, but it fell through. And this is when she came to Grad Careers Coach. So it fell through. And then I think she spent about 6 or 7 months applying by herself, and was just hitting a wall, just wasn't getting anywhere. And I think it's really interesting to note, because her CV was really good. And it shows that, she secured a job offer on the back of it, but her approach definitely needed improvement. I think her confidence, she just lacked confidence when she came to us. She needed fresh motivation and momentum. We also really used the experience that she had in Ecuador. So that 1 year experience was at a mining company. And she sort of hid it in her CV because she thought, well, I don't know how relevant that is to what I'm looking for. And she was looking for a sales role. So she kind of hid it. And we adapted the CV and we had kind of created 2 or 3 different versions and we tested them out. So essentially, cut a long story short, she had several interviews and now is working in a visa sponsored job at a mining company in the UK called Project Global. Now, I'd never heard of this company. It's a huge company, and this is the whole thing about the hidden job market. You're not necessarily going to find a company like that on a job portal. You do need to do a little bit more digging around. But the story also demonstrates that the experience that you have, whether it's, in the UK or at home, is valuable. So tying that into your job search, bridging that gap, don't underestimate the value of the experiences that you have. Okay, because I think this company might have been searching for mining or some skills or knowledge related to it, found Camilla, and the rest is history. So do just feel confident in what you do have and lead with things that you might not necessarily think are important or valuable. I hear this a lot. Oh, I did this work at, our family business for a few months, but that doesn't count, or it's my family business. But actually all of it counts. All of it tells a unique story that an employer would be interested in. Okay. So well, Karima mentioned we offer an Accelerate program, and this is in partnership with GRB. So this program that we are offering is just with GRB. So it's an exclusive 8-week program. Now, what you're actually getting, I want you to have all the information and ask me, any questions about the program and your eligibility as well. So we do a kickoff call with myself, 7 one-to-one sessions, the mock interview and feedback, our Launchpad platform. So I created an online platform in COVID, and all of the training that we've been delivering, we've sat it in this online platform where students and grads can go in, and there's lifetime access. You can look at over 25 hours of video content. I've not known anyone to go through all of it, but you might jump into things that you feel are relevant to you at your stage of your job hunting journey, whether it's like interview training or visa sponsorship conversation scripts, but you've got it all in one place. The program's a little bit different because it's a hybrid of one-to-one and group. So the reason why the group calls are included is to give you that accountability. So as well as your coach, you're also going to be in a cohort that understands exactly what you're going through. So all the stresses, all the challenges of visa sponsorship or ghosting or whatever it is that you're specifically finding difficult, you'll have a peer group that you can share your experience and you can keep each other motivated as well during this time. You'll have a LinkedIn cohort community. So I always offer LinkedIn cohorts, and usually they start that way and end up as a WhatsApp group, totally, up to the cohort. And then we obviously have the accountability coach. So all in all, the value of this program you can see is 2,674. You pay 1,500 for this program. Okay, so it's a huge saving, over £1,000, and there's an option to pay monthly. So it's $750 a month for 2 months, and obviously it's an 8-week program. So for information about the program, or actually how to apply to the program, you can scan this QR code. You'll be led to a very short Google form. We do ask for your CV, so please, if you don't mind sharing that with us. Just to mention, we can't take everybody on this program. It is specific to certain industries and sectors, and also I don't want to disappoint you if you want to go into an area that we don't have a week. Is critical. And before we go, I just want you to think about and spend some time thinking about the cost of waiting. So Camilla, for example, she came to us about 6, 7 months of job searching by herself. And she was like, oh, I wish I kind of found you guys sooner, because that caused her, I think, to have a kind of a crisis of confidence, but also financially, she had rent to pay, she had lots of various things, a lot of pressure. So think about the cost of waiting. Our next cohort does run in end of August. So we align it to the academic year when jobs are active and places do fill fast. So if you have questions and if you are interested in this particular program, I'm also running tomorrow between 1 and 2 a program Q&A, okay, for an hour. So drop in, ask questions, and I will be around for that time to answer any questions. Yeah, I think that's the end of the slideshow. So I'm happy to answer questions if we've got 5 minutes and people can hang on.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Annika. Yes, we have a few questions. So I'll just start with the Q&A section first. So someone is asking, is it possible for someone who has 1 year left of their PSW and no previous work experience to get a job with visa sponsorship?
Okay. 1 year of PSW, I think, is a really good amount. That will, by the way, fly quickly, but 1 year I think is still really good. I would say if you don't have previous work experience, see how you can close any skills gaps. So you said basic skills their field. If you don't mind sharing what field that would be quite helpful. But just think about it from an employer's point of view. If they're looking at your CV and you don't have relevant work experience, I think that's fine. Are there other ways that you can convince them that you've got the skills and the enthusiasm for that role, for you to land an interview? Okay, always ask yourself that question. So yeah, if you can explain a little bit more about the roles that you're applying for, that would be helpful. Oh, data analysis. Oh, this is a great example. So data analysis, there are lots and lots of ways for you to show your data analysis skills. So you can create a portfolio on GitHub and show your projects. It could be university projects, projects that you've done independently. Maybe you can take up another project and find a topic that you're interested in, mine the data, analyze the data, and show your work and publish it online or post about it on LinkedIn. It's Data analysis is actually a really kind of one of the easier ways to show an employer that you have those skills by publishing something, whether it's an online portfolio on LinkedIn, a website that you can link from your CV. Show your work, show all of your work. Okay.
Brilliant. Thanks, Annika. Augustine has a question. I think you might have just answered it, though, from this slide, but is the Accelerate program flexible? So can they join whenever? But yeah.
That's a really good question, Augustine. So let me talk through all the dates that you might need to know. So the first is to join the program, there is a deadline, and it's the end of March, the 31st of March is the deadline. It's flexible in the sense that, so for example, week 1 clarity call with myself, I'll have several spots for you to choose from, and I'll try and work around your schedule as much as possible. But I do want to get in that week 1 a call with you, because this is about accountability and momentum. So the 8 weeks, we want to make sure that every single week we're speaking to you. Okay, so it's flexible with the one-to-ones. We can arrange them as you wish. The only element of the program that is more fixed are the Monday group calls at 6 p.m. That's the only element that's fixed. However, all of those Monday group calls are recorded. So if you miss one of the group calls, you will have access to the full recording.
Brilliant. Thank you. And just an anonymous attendee is asking, I recently applied for a role at a company and got rejected, but saw a more suitable role which was directly related to my placement experience. But I'm only allowed 1 application per cycle. Am I allowed to send an email to a recruiter and, if possible, attach my CV alongside the message?
That's a great question. And yes, of course you're allowed. Again, the recruiter's job is to support their company and build their teams. So absolutely, I would say yes, you're not going to annoy them by doing this. If anything, if I'm a recruiter and somebody's being very proactive and expressing such an interest in a role, I'm going to like that. I'm going to admire that. And again, I may come back to you and say, oh, I'm really sorry, you filled your quota for this cycle. This is when you can next reapply. Or I might say, well, actually, we did offer it, but we've got a place that's come up. So, yes, you can apply to this. So, always ask the question because you never know. So, don't ever be afraid to bother a recruiter or a hiring manager because it's their job to hear from students and grads like yourself.
Great, thank you. So I'll just move on to the chat. We've got a few questions in here as well. Marie is asking, how do you audit a CV if the CV has to be hyper tailored to the role we are applying for?
Okay, so again, great question. We do an audit and we call it your foundation CV. Okay, your foundation CV. We need to audit just one to begin. Otherwise, it's going to be complicated and you'll get lost and it will be too much going on. So I do an audit of your foundation CV. Now, your foundation CV doesn't necessarily have to be targeted for a particular role. But what I will do is once we've got that and everything is optimized, the structure is good, the language you're using is good, the skills section looks great, everything feels ready, then it will take you through how to tailor that CV. Okay, so when you're applying for jobs, you'll have probably a folder on your laptop, you'll have your kind of foundation hero CV, and then you use that every single time you apply for a new job. Okay, then you take our tailoring system, apply it to that foundation CV, and then you save every single CV, the job role name and the company that you're applying for. So in your folder, you may end up with many, many CVs, and that's fine, but I deep dive into your foundation one.
Great, thanks, Annika. And Maria's actually asked another question. Is it not the USP also? Oh, does the USP have to be specific to the role that you're applying for?
It doesn't have to be specific to the role you're applying for, absolutely not. I think what you'll find when you start doing the work is that it naturally will apply. So, for example, one of your USPs, it could be creative problem solving. Like you love to create solutions to various problems, and you've got lots of ways in which you can give examples of this. And that's one of the things your friends say about you, and it's a really important part of how you work. So that will naturally relate, I think, to your target job. If it doesn't, then we will challenge you and we might say, okay, we have this USB. Can we relate it a little bit more to your target job and your target industry? So it kind of depends, but I think naturally it will already relate because, it comes from you and you're the one who's interested in this sector, if that makes sense.
Brilliant, thank you. And just, I'm going to combine the last two questions. I think someone might have missed when the actual Accelerate program starts, the most recent one.
Yeah.
And someone has also asked, are there any other payment plans for it?
Okay, so two great questions. The first one, it officially starts on the 1st of April, so I can do a kickoff call on that Wednesday. So that's when it officially starts. We don't offer other payment plans as yet. So the only other payment plan we can provide is a payment in full, and we offer a small discount. So it's, I think, £100 discount if you can pay in full. It is an investment alongside, studies and rent and everything else. But I guess if you show up and do the work, as I've said, we'll give you everything that we've had, in our toolkit over the last 10 years. You'll have access to us, our experts, coaching, group calls, a strategy, and somebody to kind of be in your corner for the next 8 weeks. And if this is something that you think, you know what, I am job hunting and I'm hitting a wall, or I'm just getting stuck, or I'm not sure if I'm even doing the right thing, I would suggest that this program would be a great investment for you.